So we hit go live and okay, here we are. So what a special morning. I'm in a special location. My name is Uri Schneider, and it's a privilege to host this Transcending Stuttering conversation today with an extraordinary guest, a most unique, unusual, different than all 50 something. I don't count them by numbers. Each one is an individual person. But I will tell you, I'm super excited for today's conversation with Mike Molino because he brings a special blend, a unique blend. It's kind of like a good home brew or some good Ben & Jerry's flavor. It's like you've never seen anything like this before. So we're all in for a treat, and fasten your seatbelts. We're going to talk about, growing up as a guy or as a kid with a stutter, and then ultimately finding your way through different experiences with speech therapy and different experiences with friends and school and so on. Ultimately joining the US Navy and everything that could entail. Wow. It's a world that's very unfamiliar to me, but I know a lot of people think about service and different careers and how could a person who stutters or a person who used to stutter or a person who's hiding their stutter go into a career of military service or of any kind of service or different professions. So it'll be a big treat to hear from Mike about that. And then of course, ultimately, what about family life? Like, do I feel ready to bring a kid into the world? And what if my kid was to stutter? And Mike might share a little bit about that, and then discovering self-help, discovering community. And then ultimately what I think is the most fascinating and really truly among the superheroes among us, those who have this challenge and then pivot and commit themselves to a career of service because of their experiences and their insight and understanding, and then ultimately are there to kind of pay it forward and serve the community of people who stutter. So I'm super stoked, and this is gonna be a great conversation. I'll give the proper bio, but I can't do the whole thing justice because honestly, my next week's guest, Shelley Jo Kraft, has the longest bio I've seen yet, but Mike's is just as long. More so and not to put Mike down, but his experience is more from the school of life and the number of places he's checked in. So if you're on the West Coast, he grew up in San Jose, California, and was in the US Navy for 24 years. He's retired now for 10 years, but that part of his life is alive and well in him. He has 2 grown children, and he's been married to his wife, Teresa, for 28 years. Congrats. And they live in Sacramento. I won't go on and on about the entire bio. It's all there in the details. You can read it for yourself. But his responsibilities in the Navy, his journey into self-help and kind of opening up and finding community and identity as a person who stutters, and then ultimately the advocacy he's done on television, radio, media, and just on a day-to-day basis. And says here, life is a journey. Some journeys have bumpy roads, some have smooth roads. And whether the roads are bumpy or smooth, we can only hope that our journey leads us to breathtaking views along the way. In addition to all that, I think he's the biggest tattoo enthusiast of all the guests that I have had. I don't know much about that, so that could be interesting. And he loves the outdoors, hiking and mountain biking when the weather's nice. So Mike, thanks for joining us. This is gonna be great.
Thank you very much for that intro. It's probably overserved a little. I don't think of myself like that, but it is all. I guess it is all true ultimately, right?
Mike, let's be honest. You did send me that bio, and I chopped it down. So.
I did. But yeah, I didn't think you were going to read it all out to everyone who's ever listening. And it's kind of embarrassing, but whatever.
Well, you got a lot of fans. You brought the whole posse. There's the whole Mike posse here. So just take it where you want to go.
I am honored to be here first and foremost. Thank you for the invite. I know it's been a making. In about 2 months, we've been kind of going back and forth. So yeah.
Listen, some book quicker, appreciate some book slower. Like you said, as long as we get to a breathtaking conversation.
Yeah, I remember writing that a number of years ago, and I still hold that true. There are bumpy roads and there are smooth roads, and that's what it is for fluency. That's what it is. That's my life. That's a lot of our lives. It's, anyone that knows the Sacramento area, they know the roads are not very well kept. There's a lot of potholes. and then you get on the freeway and it gets a little smooth sometimes. And but no matter where your journey goes, we can only hope you get some breathtaking views. You know, whether the roads are bumpy or smooth. There's always there's always a new road to travel too. So, you know, yeah.
One of my favorite things when I go trail running or mountain biking or driving, I love to find new trails. You know, it's nice to tread on stuff that's familiar, but there's some excitement, some adventure, some, you know, exploring new territory. And sometimes it goes smooth and sometimes it gets a little hairy, but that's part of the ride. It's part of the climb.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
My opening question, Mike, that I always open with, and then we can go into what we talked about as some touch points, but I always say, what's something about you that people don't know? Maybe beyond the bio, or, you know, something that's less known. I don't know, something that's not as prominently out there that you'd like people to know about you, that's part of your life.
Here's something. I've always been that person that likes to tinker with things. I remember when I was young, I would tear things apart. They always didn't go back together, you know, when I was really young, because I didn't know, you know, I need to put this back the right way. Pretty mechanically inclined. I like to do things like that. I remember one time I tore apart a radio, and I mean, all the pieces, they were all out, and put it all back together, and it actually worked. That was probably when I was a young teenager. But one thing many people don't know, I wanted to be an architect. I love to draw sketches of homes. I love to make floor plans. That was, I used to do that, you know, on the daily. It was for some reason, it was really interesting for me. So, or to me. And I never went down that road though. I always, you know, thought that this is what I'll do. And then I just went on a different road. There was a little, maybe, I don't know, at the time I said, let's go on this road and see where life brings me. And well, I guess it brought me here. It brought me here right now with you. So yeah.
What a treat. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know you were excited, and I'm super excited because this is actually one of our first chances to really dive deep. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up. I know there were some things that you wanted to share with us about that.
We're gonna get in there today. You know, I'm that person who don't always talk about myself. I'm not a big fan of like, oh, let me let everyone know what I'm doing. But this is important, and it's one of those things that I have shared a few times. I have a really close circle of friends who may not even heard this whole story. There's a few that have, but so anyway, I'm going to go all the way back to when I was 4 years of age. That's when I noticed I was going somewhere for speech. At the time, I didn't know what it was. Yeah, I was 4 years old. You don't know what you're doing at 4 years old, right? So we were going to speech about once a week, and I remember kind of sitting there. You know, there was an older man who was sitting on the other side of the desk, and he had all these little fun little things that I could kind of, you know, play with. Oh, I go, what's this? What's this? What's that? I didn't realize it then. That was to get me to talk with him. They were like those little puzzles. And you know how you know, if you spin it one way and you can take it apart. So I figured that was my job, and I solved them all. I was sitting there going, and I was like, okay, what do you want me to do next, right? Anyway, so after about a year, my mom, who was my biggest fan when I was younger, of course, we decided, or they decided, that it wasn't, you know, like after about a year of therapy, nothing was happening. So we decided to stop, and then I started school, started in kindergarten. I didn't think anything of it. But then when I got into the third grade, that's when I noticed that, I wasn't the same. I didn't speak the same as everyone else, and what's going on. So, uh, then because we had split up into a reading group, and so maybe 50%, of us, we were over there in a reading circle. And I'm going to let the dog out real quick. I'm going to continue to talk though. And so with that, when it was my turn, I had so much anxiety built up, and I didn't even realize it then, because it all went in a circle. And then, let's say, for example, if there was 8 of us in a circle, which, there were probably more. I think I read last, which was, I think from that point on, I never wanted to go last again. But, and I was like, I am not the same. What is going on here? And from that moment on, I remember going to the school speech therapist at least once a week. And I could remember reading books over and over, like the same little phrases over and over and over. Yes, eventually we all become fluent reading the same phrase over and over. So if you're a young therapist out there, do not do that. I will reach through the camera, and probably don't do that. Everyone becomes fluent after those over and over, right? But it was a book. There was a bunch of bees in the book, and it was about the boy bouncing the blue ball. And see, I still remember that little phrase because it was so devastating. Like, why am I reading this? I'm not stupid, but that's the way it made me feel. And so by doing that, it really started to put a negative effect on me, as far as, wow, I'm not as smart as anyone else, because I'm going to a special ed room where at that age, we don't know these things, right? Um, you know, and I didn't want to be there. But we had moved eventually when I was in the 5th grade. We moved. And so it was probably mid-year, and I had to go into another school. And I skipped a lot of school because of the sheer fear that now I have to, speak in front of these other people who I don't know, and they're going to find out. They're going to see me struggle, and they're going to find out. And so I skipped. I always said I was sick, something I didn't feel good. Hell, okay, this is another point right here. Probably never said this. Mom, if you're listening, I rolled in poison oak just to skip school because of the fear of my speech. Because I didn't want to engage.
Let's just hold that for a second. You intentionally rolled yourself in poison oak so you'd have a legitimate out. It was more comfortable to avoid showing up for class that day, and it just seemed a reasonable thing to do, to roll your body in poison oak. And that resonates with, I just want to, as a point of reference, also something some people don't know. In the Transcending Stuttering documentary film, Alan Rabinowitz tells the story of it's going around the room. It's almost his turn. He's holding out. He's counted how many turns it's coming his way. He takes a pencil and he puts the pencil through his palm, and they have to rush him to the hospital. And he says it didn't hurt one bit. It felt much more comfortable than the feeling of anticipated humiliation. And what's crazy is that Frankie Jones, a black man from Nebraska, said the exact same thing, but it would have been uncanny to put both stories in the film. But this idea of doing crazy things speaks to how much anticipation, discomfort, humiliation, pain, people are living with, and they'll do anything. And it might seem crazy, but for that person in that moment, it makes sense. And the more people realize the intensity of that experience, the more we can support and understand that and not think it's crazy at all. That's really powerful.
Yeah, it was really so devastating, so debilitating. I mean, I've come up with every excuse in the book. My stomach, I don't feel good, blah, 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 sick, I, threw up, which I didn't, all these things, thinking, I got a bright idea. I'm allergic to poison oak. I'm going to go up the stream. I'm going to roll in it like a fool. Well, yeah, I didn't. I just kind of, and when I was younger, I was really allergic to it, and it poof. And so I was out of school for like almost a month, probably like weeks. It was like 3 to 4 weeks. I was like, yes, I don't have to talk to anyone. Woo, bad idea. Not the brightest of my ideas when I was in the 5th grade, I got in a few fights over it too. I did. And once again, Mom, I apologize, but I've never told why I got in these fights. I always just said, I don't know. It was just the thing. I don't know. But it was because.
What was it about? Was it
someone's making fun of my stutter. Yeah.
Someone made fun of you, and you
there's always one kid that's going to do something. And so one of them was the recipient of, do you remember those little rubber dodgeballs about this big, and you could kind of put it in your hand and you could wing it real bad? So this guy's on the monkey bars, swinging back and forth. This is in the 5th grade, swinging back and forth. I, so happened to be holding a red rubber ball, kind of like, like magic in my hand, like, woo, just woof, bam. And he fell to the ground. I went over there, pap, 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 pap. And we went into the principal's office, and they asked why. I just said, I don't know. Because it was easier to say, I don't know. It was easier to say, I don't know, and not explain why I felt at that very moment in time I needed to do that. Because then I would have to speak about my stutter then. And
side point, if I may interject.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would agree, Mike, but as a tip for anyone out there, I tolerate just about anything in the clinical space when we meet people, meeting them where they're at. The one thing I don't tolerate is I don't know. And I think I can't think of one time that's a good answer. That's always hiding something. That's always fear right there. That's fear
exactly.
that they won't give me the time I need. They won't like me the same after I tell them what I really think. They won't believe me, but it's a telltale sign there's something there. And I think if you're on the other side of I don't know, helping that other person, either give them some multiple choice or something, but teach them early. I don't know is not acceptable. Everything else is acceptable, is better than that. Yeah.
And as an adult now doing therapy, whenever I say, hey, we're going to read a book, we're going to do this, we're going to do this activity, and then I'm going to ask you some things, and they say, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? I said, that's not an answer. So, the other side of it now, I'm like, what do you mean? That's not even an answer, And then I said, what about I give you an option or two? And they're like, oh, I'm like, exactly. It's in there. You just didn't want to tell me at that very moment for whatever reason, right? So anyway, so when I got into the 7th grade, I finally gotten fed up with being pulled out of class. Over the years, it was always announced into the, over the loudspeaker in the room, Michael, go to speech. And I would have to get up in shame, walk out the door, walk to the portable, which was the special ed room, and whatever they had me doing that day, which I'm sure was a lot more of, let's read this same phrase over again and you'll be fluent. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll be fluent for like 5 minutes, and then when I leave, it's right back to the way it was, right? So I just got fed up with it, and when I got home from school one day, I don't know if it was mid-year or 7th grade or whenever, but I know it was in the 7th grade. I waited for my mom to get home from school or from work, and I said I don't want to go to speech anymore, and I explained why, and And she said, okay. And I stopped. I just stopped. And I didn't go back until after I got out of high school. I was going to JC at the time because I didn't take one of the entrance exams solely based on the fear and all the years of you're being placed in the average class because they think something is wrong with your intelligence because of the stutter. I didn't like that feeling at all. I listened, I watched in with our really good friend John Moore, and he talked something about that with his sister and him. She was always in the higher classes. He was always in the average classes because of the perception that you're not smart, because that you have difficulty speaking, or that you have difficulty with whatever the words are. So we find lesser words that makes a little sense at the time because of the word substitutions and all that other stuff, or I don't know, right? I don't know. Then so you don't know, guess what? You're in the average classes at best, and good luck in life. That's the way it seemed. And yeah.
So that's the way you were getting through high school, sounds like.
I mean, I knew the answers. I just never raised that hand to say, hey, pick me. I don't know one person back then that would say, pick me, I stutter, let me speak in front of everyone, right? It's just not that thing. I never did it. I would skip school. I would skip school on days I knew I had to give a presentation. I just wouldn't go. Or I would go and say it was like we're doing a class and I had to do it for like third period. I would leave after second, and then I would come back after fourth. I just wouldn't go to class because of the fear, the sheer fear of speaking in front of the whole class. Because
So
I
Mike,
didn't want.
when did you become the or was there a seed at that point? Because at the same time you're talking about being driven by fear and trying to stay safe, you also said you pegged the kid and you punched the hell out of him, you know. And I think of you as one of the toughest, strongest, bravest, boldest, and obviously that evolved over time. But was there, at the same time, there was this fear? Was that also inside of you then, or that only came later? Just interested how that all evolved, your persona.
I think the fear of all that was always there. It just comes out, it's, like the ebbs and flows of everything, right? There'll be moments where we'll speak fluently for hours, even for days for some, or for just little fractions of a second. And you're like, I live for those moments, right? Um, my stutter when I was younger was a lot more severe than it is right now. I will say that right now. So for any listeners out there who have never met me and you're sitting there going, huh? Yeah, we've had some pretty good moments already. And there's going to be more, because of the road. Like right now, the roads are pretty smooth. But it's always there. It's always in the back of your mind. If I could ever explain anything to anyone, people who stutter, I shouldn't say everyone because I don't know everyone, but a lot of us will think 4, 5, 6 words ahead, and
Planning.
that just panic. Oh, I'm going to say this word. Let me try a word substitute really quick. So I'm always kind of on the go. Probably not the best thing because you get a little sidetracked and sometimes you don't make sense, but we're always kind of doing something like that. I try not to do it as much these days because it's just not a good look anymore, but it works. It works for some people and it works well. There are some that do it so amazingly well, you wouldn't know that much about it until you started to really analyze them. But I
It
tried to,
works. It
yeah,
works one thing, which is to cover up and to conceal,
but it
but it doesn't
hides
work.
so
That's right.
much.
That's right.
Exactly. There.
It suppresses the real words and the real feelings and the real desire to express yourself. So as Frankie Jones says in the movie, you won that battle, but there's a much
Yes.
bigger war, which is
Yeah.
self-respect and dignity and feeling like
All
you're
those.
being authentic. So take us fast forward. I just want to make sure there's so many chapters here. I don't know if you want to share
You
more
know,
from the childhood, but I'm super fascinated with the Navy. You can stick with
yeah.
whatever you want, how that goes.
Fast forward, I'm in school. I am going to in college, probably my first semester or so. Funny thing is, actually, when I registered that very first semester, I was nervous as hell because I knew they were going to ask me some stuff and I had to, give an answer. And the person on the other side of the desk says, "Hey, I don't know if you're aware of this. We have a speech clinic on campus. Are you interested?" I said, "Sure, why not?" And I went. That's when I was first introduced. Eventually, after probably mid semester, going twice a week, I would go. Um, um, this wonderful lady, wonderful SLP, she introduced me to the NSP. She gave me a phone number to a guy named Mel Hoffman, who passed away just like last year or the year before. I forget now. But anyway, yeah, last year. And I had the phone number for a number of years. Never went to a chapter meeting in San Jose because of fear, because I didn't know what it was going to be like. So I one day on the
Also, I just want to pause there for 1 sec. I just want to share, right? So, such a common story. You think, let me give this person this phone number. This is going to be the golden ticket. And the person holds that ticket in their wallet. They have it somewhere, or they
yeah,
deliberately lose it. But it'll take days, weeks, months. So if you're trying to be that helper to someone else and you think you're giving them this opportunity, it's important to understand stages of change or a process or
yeah,
resistance, and just understand it's understandable and it's very normal to not be ready to take that leap. There are a lot of pieces that need to be in place, not just I'm ready to get a number, but am I ready to make the call? Am I ready to make the call, but I'm not ready to go? And that process could take time, and it's important to honor that process one way or another.
yeah. I wasn't ready for a good 10 years. And then I finally, so eventually we'll probably get to that point. But so one day on the way home, probably after probably going to school about a year, maybe a little bit longer than a year, I decided to drive by the Navy office, which is on the way home. And I walked in and I basically said, "Where do I sign?" And they were like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to join." And so I did. And but I said, but under one condition, I want to finish out the remainder of the fall semester, yada yada yada. And yeah, so I did. And then I joined, and yeah, I thought I would join for 3 years, and then I would go back to school at some point. I just wasn't sure which of the roads I wanted to go. And then I ended up getting stationed in Lemoore, California. It's in the Central Valley, not well known. It's kind of by Fresno. It's an air base, and we did search and rescue operations. I worked on the aircraft, and we did search and rescue, and then that's what I did for my first 4 years. I met some really interesting friends, some lifelong friends, and then I ended up re-enlisting and re-enlisting and re-enlisting, and stayed for 24 years. Yeah.
Mike, was the Navy a chapter that you ran to because you had a calling, or was it a convenient out, like to just kind of delay, your next academic step or your next step into adulting?
I think I just got fed up with doing the same thing with my friends. Yeah, we're good friends. I have lifelong friends, and yeah, there's a group of us. There's 7, 8, I don't know, whatever the number is. Sometimes there's another number. Sometimes one fades off. Who knows? But we were doing the same thing. We were going to school. We were coming home. We were doing the same thing, the same routine. And I just wanted something different. I was getting like, I don't want to be in academics anymore. I don't want to be going to school. I don't want to have to speak in front of the class and give a presentation. I don't want to do these things. I was probably running, and I never really got into why. I showed up one day from home, and I told my mom, I said, I signed up, and I joined the Navy. She was like, what? So it was a surprise. No one knew. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. It was, yeah, I love the Navy. I love the idea of going out to see the world. I enjoyed that. I got married after I was in about 6 years, five, yeah, 5.5 years or so. We have 2 wonderful kids from all that. The fortunate thing about the Navy is of the security for a job, the good things that come out of it, the bad things, you're never home. You're always gone out to sea. You're gone 6-7 months at a time. So I missed a lot of life, because of that. I missed a lot of their life. So we decided I was going to retire out of San Diego, but the Navy had other plans for me, and I ended up staying another 2 years, and yeah, retired 10 years ago. Actually, 10 years ago, on the 31st of March, and I went to school. I sat on my butt for about 3 months. My wife finally got fed up with me and said, "What are you going to do?"
She wasn't used to being home so much.
No. And then we were doing this a lot, bang, bang, because of that too, right? I went down to Sac State, and I enrolled, and the guy says, "You missed enrollment by 3 weeks." I'm like, if she would have said something about a month before, I probably would have went earlier, and I probably would have enrolled for that semester. But
just a bump in the road.
Yeah, so I went to a JC here. I just did a few things that I needed anyway. Yeah, at that time, I already had an associate's, and yeah, I didn't look back. I went and did all the undergrad classes. I got my bachelor's from Sac State, and at that time, I wasn't sure if I was going to even apply for a master's program.
Now, at this point, Mike, you're a father?
Oh, yeah.
So wait, so rewind, because when we spoke ahead of time, I don't know if you want to go there, but you said there was some really powerful stuff in the chapter right before becoming a dad. And
oh, yeah, I did go over that.
If you want to go there.
No, I do. We can
revisit that. Go ahead.
1988. I'm up in Everett, Washington. I'm on shore duty. Reading the paper, I see the NSA has a huge conference right there in Seattle. No, 1998. Did I say 88? Yeah, whatever. So anyway, and
listen, the fact that it's 19 something just
is like something. I think the majority of people, like the 1900s. What was there even vehicles in the 1900s, right? But
your hair was dark then.
Jet black. It was like this. Well, with a few gray, but yeah. So signed up. I registered, did all this stuff, and I went to the convention. I sat outside because I was kind of nervous, wasn't sure what's going on. So I walked in the lobby and kind of sat there. For the sad thing is the fear overwhelmed me so much. I sat there for about 2 hours in the lobby, watching people walk by, I don't know if they're with the convention or if they're just there, but there's a lot of people. And I was like, wow. And that just even made, me get back into my hole a little bit more. At this point, I'm already in the Navy for like 10 years. I'm a supervisor. I ran a shop. I did all these things. I spoke all the time, but the fear of speaking to new people who I don't know, what drove me there was my daughter was born in 96. She was about two, just over two, and I started to notice a little disruption in her speech. And I was like, oh, hell no, this is not what I want. Because of all the struggles I went through. And so I figured I might as well go there and see if I could figure something out, right? And eventually the fear, I walked out of there. I paid, I did all that stuff, paid for parking, did everything I needed to do, but walk up into the registration desk and say, hey, I'm here, because I knew I was going to have to say my name. And that was so difficult then. It was really difficult. So I drove home. Never said anything about it. Just, I don't even know if my wife knows that whole story. But
I know
the fear.
so many stories so similar, like someone's looking for a job and they go out every day with the best intentions to go in and interview and meet with the right people to do some networking, and they just can't do it. And they come home so ashamed, and their wife says, or their husband says, hey, honey, how was the day? And, oh, good. How are your meetings? Honest person,
Yeah.
but they'll bluff their way through it because
Yeah.
it's so humiliating and shameful. And
It is.
at least, listen, progress though, Mike, you didn't go jump into some poison oak.
Exactly, because I didn't know that stuff is bad. I have so many stories about poison oak when I was a kid, but yeah.
Too many. So you went, you paid, and you basically came home having not even attended the program
I
that
didn't
you had
even get
signed
my
up for.
little, if they even gave them that, I didn't get anything. It's kind of like I wasn't even
No
there.
swag, as if you weren't
Yeah.
there.
No, they got my money for free, which is okay. Here, and take the money. I don't care.
But you did it because you didn't have to
But the
say your name.
shame
So
and the guilt.
yeah.
So that was my first little like, okay, I'm moving forward with this. Then a few months later, I meet up with I got a hold of the chapter leader, who's a dear friend of everyone's in the NSA. And, so I showed up into a meeting, my first meeting. There were probably 10 of us there. I was like, wow, this is kind of overwhelming, but the weight just dropped. The weight of thinking I'm the only, and I knew I wasn't the only person in the world, but just the weight of being in a support group where there's others who spoke just like me. There were doctors and researchers and lawyers, and we had a Navy guy, there too. All these people, that changed my life. And after the meeting, I was outside speaking to the chapter leader, Elaine Robin. She and I spoke for probably a good hour and a half after. We just sat in the car. She didn't know me from Sam. She took the time. We sat in the car. We had so many similarities. And I explained my fear about my daughter. And she was a grad student at the time, working on her master's for speech pathology, and she explained some of the things, probably developmental stuttering at this time. Don't put a bunch of pressure on her, and she kind of walked me through that. And so I didn't put that pressure on my daughter, and all the other stuff, and things worked out fine for both of my children. They don't stutter. I could honestly say I'm glad they don't. Just because it's not a good feeling. But if they did, I would be their full support, whatever they needed.
I think that's such a nuanced and honest thing as parents. We want our kids to have it as smooth as possible. I mean, that's like a normal parental wish, and certainly not to have to go through the tough things that we've gone through, even if we've grown through them, even if we've come to embrace them, even if we get to a point where we say, you know what, that challenge, that hardship was a gift, it's still fair to say we would prefer our kids not have to go through that hardship and get
Yeah, we
those
don't want
lessons
our
and those
kids.
values easier.
Exactly. No one wants to have their their children go through, like the same hardship that you went through when you were younger. And that was one thing I definitely was really aware of, and I didn't want them to go through it. Yeah, I don't. It's just,
I would just say
it's.
one thing on that, may I?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
My wife and I in the past year went through something with one of our kids, and it was quite scary. And clearly there was a desired outcome in this scenario. And at the same time, it was my years of working and meeting and learning from people who stutter that gave me the wisdom to realize I had to make sure it was a win-win. Even if the news was the more difficult news, that couldn't be that the good news was good and the bad news was bad. Didn't mean I had to want the bad news, so to speak, but I had to frame it in a way for myself and as a team, my wife and I, for our child, so that whatever came, there wasn't this unbelievable burden, unbelievable weight that if it went this way, we're good. If it went this way, oh boy, we're up the
Yeah.
creek. And so I think the nuance there of what you just said, like you really wish that your kids wouldn't have to deal with it. And of course, if they did, as a person who lived through it, grew through it, came to grips with it, you would be the best father you could be for them, and you'd
Yeah.
help them win no matter what. But it doesn't mean you don't prefer the easier path. And if it
Oh
goes the
yeah.
other way, you dig in and you say, we're going to make this good too. And
Yeah.
so I
We're
think
gonna
that's
make
very
this okay.
nuanced for therapists and for parents, especially for young children, when you don't know which way things are going to go. I think it's really important to say, look, plan A is that maybe they'll grow out of it. And maybe there's some things we can do that can support that and stay out of the way of like nature's course. And on the other hand, if they continue to stutter, which is a possibility, let's make sure we're planting the seeds and doing things that are setting that up for a win as well, and that it doesn't become
Yeah.
something that derails them. The win-win doesn't mean that you have to want both, but at least that you're ready and open to work with both, whichever way it goes, smooth or
Exactly.
bumpy.
I mean, and that too, when 4 years later, when we had our son, and he got to that point in life where he was, speaking more, and um, I was listening, but I wasn't worried. Um, and if it was going to happen, it was going to happen, and if not, then it didn't. But I was listening, but I wasn't like, ooh, as like for my daughter at first, I was like, oh, I want you to say that again, and that was the worst thing I could ever do, probably. But
I just
um,
listening, but not worried, right there is a
yes,
post we have to create from this conversation. If parents, if professionals, if we can listen attentively with care and attention, but without worry, because the worry comes across. It comes between the words, it comes on our face, it comes in our heartbeat, in our breath, in our energy. And kids need to feel safe. And if they're feeling the worry of the adults around them, that's going to be picked up. And so if
that
you're worried, talk to somebody, talk to your partner, talk to a therapist, talk to friends, but know that the most important thing for your kid is not that you fake it, but that you don't transmit to them, unfiltered raw worry, because they're looking to the adults to make them feel safe and secure.
that like the whole part of listening is something I do really well, and I think that's because of my maybe the adventures in life, maybe my experience in the Navy, because you always have to listen to everything, right? And as a therapist, I've always said, and I truly believe in this, we need to listen more. If a therapist is doing the majority of the speaking, they're doing speech wrong. They don't come to us so they could listen to us. They can come to us so they can communicate. And but if we're doing all the speaking in every session, what benefit is that for the individual, right? It just means you have a therapist who likes to speak and is going to speak the whole time, and they're not invested. And so I always say, if you're doing the majority of the speaking in your session, you're doing therapy wrong. I don't know.
Well said. Well said.
That's what I believe in anyway. But yeah, so You know, the journey
Well,
always continues and stuff, but I want you to ask me some more stuff because I know we spoke about some other stuff too.
sure. Well, clearly you're so in it. It's like you had so much you wanted to share. I think the next chapter has
Yeah.
to do with this evolution from being the kid who's rolling around in poison oak. Anything would be better than showing up in class and having me verbal, to then kind of taking your dandy old time, whatever it was, 7 years, to kind of show up in a meeting that you did not attend.
Oh, it
You
was like
know,
11. Yeah.
11. Sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to rush the process.
No,
11
no,
years
yeah.
percolating. And
Hmm.
then today we look at Mike, and you're looking at ease, you're looking present, you're looking integrated with it and with yourself, and you spend your time volunteering, hosting StutterSocial meetups around the world online for people in different time zones around the world to connect. Big shout out to StutterSocial, and
There you
I don't want
go.
to forget
Stutter
anybody, but
social.
Danielle Rossi and David Resnick and all the people with the foresight that were involved. And I apologize if I'm missing anyone, but the foresight to create
Oh,
online meetups. Who am I
I
missing?
think we've got to mention Mitchell.
Mitch Trichon, of course. He's got
Yes, we got to mention. Yeah.
fingerprints on so many good things that
Yes.
exist in the world today in the world of stuttering. But just the idea of creating an online, meetup situation like that way before COVID is remarkable foresight. But look at you, like from the poison oak, now you're rolling around hosting meetings, facilitating meetings, and spending your days advocating in schools and working with young people in schools, doing speech therapy. What in the world? Like that shift and what that was about and how that happened. You were talking about being at school, not sure if you were going to go to grad school. So we were kind of just up to that point where maybe how did you end up in speech? Like that's a pretty bold step.
Yeah, I was. So when I finished or I was just about finishing my bachelor's in speech, I was kind of like, do I want to go to grad school? I don't know. This is a lot of work, a lot of energy. Yeah, honestly, I was the older guy in class, and I wasn't the oldest. There were some women who were like 5, 6, 7 years older than me. I was kind of like, wow, this is interesting. Yeah, but yeah, I'm thinking, what are you doing at this? But anyway, I was like, so. I applied to one school, one application. I got in. Um, there was only two guys, and that was it. And there were 16 women. And
That's
and then
better
the
than the
journey
numbers in
began.
my school. That was better
Yeah.
than my class. I was one out of 13.
Well, I will say this, and then I took a break after my first year in grad school because life gets in the way, life does stuff. I needed to pull back. There was all kinds of reasons. So I took a clinical break, semester off. I still did academics. Um, then I went part time for the remainder of another year. So I graduated a year later than I was supposed to. But during that year, I ended up in two other, with, these new groups and new people. Yes, I knew who they were. So it wasn't a big deal. But the funny thing is, I ended up graduating with, there were in total 7 guys.
If you wait long enough, I think men will
We were like,
dominate the field.
yeah, we got 7 guys, woo, right? But and then the following semesters there were no guys, so I think they shot their load and go, let's put all these guys in, and then we won't do it for a few years, right? So yeah.
They realized it was a mistake.
Yeah, they probably was like, oh, okay, we're well diverse now. We got all these men in here, and now we're going to shut it back down. I mean, I'm only making light of the situation, of course, but there are
In
so
all
few people.
seriousness, in all seriousness, there are
In all
so many young people
seriousness,
out there
exactly.
who need therapists who look more like them and talk more like them. So whether you're a person who stutters, whether you're a person who's black, a person who's Hispanic, a person who's of Asian origin, or a person who anything, men, the field is in dire need of more
Yeah.
representation. And most importantly, it's not some esoteric, abstract, let's have diversity in the field. That's good too. But the people we serve are looking for people that look and talk like them. And I think that's what's so critical. So if you're thinking about it and you're like, well, there's no other men. Well, aren't a lot of people who stutter. Well, aren't a lot of black speech therapists. That's true. and you
Yeah,
could change that. You could change that. So jump
yeah,
in. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so then I finished, did that. I started working at a private practice. I wanted to work for the VA, honestly. That's where I wanted to go. But actually, when I did my internship at the VA, which I loved, but seeing vets and spouses of vets, and they're older and they show up and they're sick. You're doing, evals on them to see where they were or what's going on, why they were there and all this other stuff. And it really tugs at your heart. And being a vet myself of so many years, um, I didn't want to do that every day. I did not want to see vets that are there probably never leave there, because they're dying. And I decided at that point, I said, yeah, I wanted to go into medical speech. That's what I wanted to do. But just the sheer volume of seeing vets in there every day, some wouldn't come back often. I was like, yeah, I can't. So,
I'll just make a shout out for people like myself that don't come from military families or things like that. It's people like you, Mike, that give new meaning to these legal holidays of Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And like, I think all of us need to tune into that and recognize the service of others and also the sacrifices. Those were lives that will, in some times, and families that are forever changed by the service. And we have to appreciate that. So I can
yeah.
understand why that would be intense. But if for us, it's helpful to hear these stories, to have more appreciation. So you pivoted out of that. Let's get into, here you are on the other side of what was your experience, right? You had been on the receiving end of therapy. Now you're on the side of being the therapist. So what does that mean to you? What does that, do you ever pinch yourself and like look in the mirror and be like, huh? Like, what? And,
Just
and,
about
and
every
what do
day.
you
It's
do
kind
with
of
it?
like, huh? Yeah, I do. I try to always be present. I try to be that calm voice, on the other side of whether it was when I was in office or whether it's here virtually now, because that's all I do now is I do speech virtually. Um, Sometimes I get some interesting questions from parents about speech and about what they think. I'm always honest, especially with my fluency ones. And I've had some pretty hard discussions with parents, um, and just sitting on the other side of the desk, or virtually, but especially the other side of the desk when it was in person. You often think, wow, I'm doing this way differently than I remember. And it's because of a reason. I did not like the way I was receiving speech. So I changed the delivery for only make it better for someone else. And don't focus on the fix. Let me fix that. We could fix the articulation. We could give you ways to fix a list. We could do this. We could give you memory tips. We could do all these wonderful things, right? We could, hey, you got a swallowing problem. Let me give you some techniques that'll make it easier, right? All these things. For fluency, it's a different animal. It's a different cube. And you have to move that, switch it to what's going to benefit the individual. You're still serving what the parent is there for, but you've got to educate the parent, and you have to connect. Usually in office when I do interviews, or whether it's now virtually, um, I they probably would walk out not even knowing, hey, he stutters too, until maybe the second or third session. And then if not, then I'll open up and say, I want to share something with you. And then they're kind of like, whoa, what the, um, yeah, it's,
What would you say? I have this thought. Let's say I was the parent, or let's say I was kid, or let's say I was this up and coming speech therapist, and let's say I got you, I shouldn't fix it, right? So that's like the negative or the warning of like, don't do that. So I believe, you know, just like with a baby taking away the pacifier, you got to swap the pacifier for like a safety blanket, you know? So I
Yeah.
often feel that when we take something away, we got to replace it. So what would be your guiding principle or your offer to an up and coming speech therapist or to a parent? So, okay, I got that. Don't fix with all the desire I have to fix my kid, just like what we talked about before. It's a natural desire to spare somebody a difficult ordeal. At the same time, if I'm not fixing it, what can I do? What should I be focused on? What can I, you know, proactively, positively focus on offering as a parent or as a therapist, or in your practice? What are you
You
looking
need to
to?
listen. Well, we need to listen. You know, you go through school, you end up with a master's degree, and the thing is fix, 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 you know, da 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 da. Listening, you know, and talking and communicating, that's what it's all about, right? I don't care if you have it so severe, it takes you 5 hours to get out one word. I'm going to listen. The next in time, maybe it's only 4 hours. Yeah, they still struggle. The next time, maybe it's 3. The next time, maybe it's only 15 minutes. You know, whatever that is, you got to connect. You have to communicate. That's what it's all about, and we allow it. Yes, we will show you techniques that make it easier, but when they're super young, they don't have that mental capacity to think about, oh, I need to do this, I need to think about this, I need to get a full breath support, I need to do certain things, because they just don't know. They're young. When they get a little bit older and they could think about these things and they could engage and they could do it and they could do it in technique, it's really difficult. It's something you have to do all the time. It's exhausting. It's exhausting thinking about the words and the breath support and the way, the easy, all these things. It's so exhausting. I'm surprised more people don't. They're like, you know, I'm out of it. But we
You're
as
surprised
people,
that more people don't say, I can't, I'm just not
yeah,
opting into that, because
yeah,
it is so exhausting. It's such a tax. It's such a
it
significant
is.
tax. It's like
It
moving from New York to Florida. You just don't want to pay the tax anymore.
it's very draining. It's you're just, if I try to monitor and to engage all the fluency skills I can teach, as I'm doing right now, I've been doing it for a few minutes, at least for 5 probably. um it's exhausting. I will be tired later because of it.
Why did you
Because
do it? Mike, let me ask you a challenging question. Why, if it's exhausting and it can be a choice that's legitimate for you,
yeah,
why did you choose to turn it on the past few
it's
minutes in such a
still
deliberate
the
way, as opposed
desire.
to
It's still the desire to be fluent.
which is what? Over the desire to be fluent is greater than,
I don't know. I don't,
like you and
because
me, let's get real. You're a guy that's got tattoos on your chest and on your back. Now you and me, if we were having this conversation, we'd have no problem doing it in a jacuzzi with a bathing suit on. Forget the shirts. Go
jacuzzi bathing
informal.
suit, kind of deep. Are you wearing like a small bathing suit or like, you know?
Mike, the imagery is getting a little bit beyond
Yeah,
what
I
I was
don't want
ready
to go
for.
there.
What I
Exactly.
mean, what I mean to say is, we dress up in all sorts of clothing because it's more comfortable to be covered, and it's more comfortable to dress the way people expect you to dress. But as we talked about on Zoom, you don't know what shorts I'm wearing or pajama pants. Who knows, right? In
Exactly.
reality, you and I like to be pretty informal and pretty comfortable. So it's just a curiosity for me at this stage of
This is the
your
reason
life.
right here.
Yeah.
This is the reason. There's going to be people that are probably going to watch this, or that are watching it right now. They're live streaming, whatever whatever that is. And techniques work. Bottom line, I
You want
gave
to
a
make sure that gets
demonstration.
across. Yeah.
that I gave a demonstration. They do work. If you utilize them and you do these certain things, they work. They are exhausting. There's no doubt. There are people that use them extremely well. I wanted to show on video, if someone's kind of watching, they get the full spectrum. Yes, I use them too. Most of the time I don't. The majority of the time
That's it.
I don't.
That's the full picture. I just wanted to highlight that. You
Yeah.
wanted to emphasize it can be useful and you can smooth things out if you choose to. It comes at a cost, it comes at a price. And for you at this stage of the game, you're an SLP, you're a worldwide advocate, you're a leader, you're a strong person. You choose to use it sometimes, but at your core, you'll still have interruptions in your flow. And at times you'll choose to just talk freestyle and not employ technique. That I think is an eye-opening thing I'd like to leave everybody to sit on. And I'll leave you, Mike. I'll say one more thing, and then I'm going to let you take us home with one last piece of wisdom, if you wish. But I'm just going to say this, and then you get the mic for the take home. I think that with kids, what I would offer therapists, and it's really coming off of what you were saying, I'm just framing it the way I might say it. I think the active thing we're trying to do is let people grow into themselves and let people become who they really are. And to do that, what Mike said was we need to listen and to tell people, look, if it takes you a little bit more time, I'm going to give you more time. I'm here. I'm not interested in the clock. I'm interested in you. And when we do that, I go back to 9th grade biology. I remember the amoeba. The amoeba has this semi-permeous skin, or whatever that thing was called. I forgot, between the mitochondria and the nucleus and then all these other plasma pieces. But the high pressure, low pressure thing, right? Things naturally flow from from high pressure to low pressure, right? So when we listen as a parent or as a therapist, what we're doing is actually not passive. It's not the absence of something. It's active listening is creating a low pressure space for what someone's holding inside, which is becoming pretty high pressure, to just be sucked out of them. You're creating space for them to come out. And usually the world is coming at them so hot and heavy, so pressured, it naturally doesn't allow them to kind of just flow out. So I think what we need to do as therapists, as parents, and as educators, and I hope this resonates with you, I think it does, is to create that space, again, not for some like cliche space term, but create space for people to take a turn, to take a chance, to say what they got to say, to be who they got to be, because the world doesn't do that enough, especially for people who just need an extra second. And people who stutter and others just need a little extra chance, a little extra space for them.
If I may, real quick, I was seeing a 5.5-year-old when I was in a private practice. His parents were encouraged to come to speech 3 days a week. And I took over eventually for this kid. And the mother had huge concerns about the amount of time that was suggested. And I sat there with her, and we've had numerous conversations on the phone and in person, and told her, I agree with you. I agree that too much once a week is enough. And then eventually once every other week. At this age, it's so hard. And the biggest thing is we always want to encourage them, to make speaking fun. It doesn't matter the way you deliver it, make it fun. I don't ever want anyone to lose their voice. And I don't mean they're going to lose their voice because they're screaming and yelling one day and the next day it's really sore. I mean, not use your voice. By not using it, you have lost it. And there are so many people that go that way, and we have to encourage them to speak. And the fear and the anxiety that this young man was having, at 5.5 years old, he just wanted to play in the dirt. He just wanted to play. It didn't matter. He's not at that point. And I told the mother a story. I said, these are going to be the stages he's going to go through more than likely. At a certain point, He will be back. He will do therapy. But at 5.5, he wasn't interested. So there was no buy-in. I said, when he gets into school, second grade, third grade, he's going to start to look at everything around him and figure out that he's the only one that speaks this way. And I told her a little bit of a story that I had at that same age. And I said, I just want you to be prepared. There's going to be shame. There's going to be guilt. There's going to be this. He is going to regress. He's going to, because that's what typically happens. It doesn't always happen, of course. There are some that are really resilient and they do well, especially when they're in a support group. There's so many great ones for kids, but when you're alone and there's no one else like you, more than likely, they're going to, fall back a little bit and they won't use their voice. And that's what we don't ever want that. So by pulling out a speech, you can come back in a few months, give me a phone call, that's enough for right now. And as a therapist, those are the skill sets that we all need to figure out to do the right thing, right? First and foremost, do no harm, right? That's what it is. And if you think about the word, oh no, it's just a word, but do the right thing. By me engaging with a parent that way and talking with them, it makes life so much easier for everyone on the other side of the desk, right? And we have phone calls still to this day once in a while, like once every few months or once every 6 months. Hey, or like a little email, things are going well, And that's all I could ever think, right? If I could reach one person, if I could reach a second person, even better. If I could reach 5 people, that's wonderful, right? We have to do it in a way that is that we do no harm. And by forcing students and kids, whatever it is, to do it a certain way. And if you cannot engage in their facial expression and know there's no buy-in, you have other problems. You need to look in the mirror and figure yourself out first. But that's the way I do it anyway. I always try to figure out all the pieces before anything else. So I don't know.
Saving the best for last. If you're a parent or an SLP, I suggest you just re-listen to the last 4 minutes of wisdom bombs dropped by the one and only Mike Molino. And here's something interesting, Mike. I'm just going to reflect for you. I don't know if you realize it, but it hit me like a ton of bricks while you were talking.
Yeah.
They don't teach what you just said in grad school, and they can't. There ain't no textbook, no course that could teach it. It mirrors the lessons, the tough lessons that you lived. You talked about being that kid who was burnt out in therapy and had the courage to tell your mom no mas. And your mom had the wisdom to listen to you and end it and give you a break. And then the idea of readiness, and there were different things you were ready for at different times. At some points, you just wanted to hide on, let the ground swallow you up would be better than having to stand in that place of discomfort.
Exactly.
At a later point, you were ready to hold a phone number for 11 years, if I paid attention right. Then you were ready to go, but not step in the room. That was another step. And then you stepped into that room. And now you live and breathe and swim and have so much joy and blessing in that room of friends and, lifelong connections of feeling like these are my peeps. And then you step into the field and you just bring all that wisdom with the professional credentials. You're a superpower. You're a superhero. And I really mean that. So I'm so grateful. And I think if more people listen to conversations like the one you just shared, those are some of the most valuable lessons on top of a good professional training, rigorous attention to the research and all the latest research coming out from our wonderful colleagues and friends, but ultimately the stories of lived experiences and the wisdom of, again, the school of life, which is where your bio is just so rich in that. But listening to your story, Mike, was very enriching for me. And I know it's going to give a lot to a lot of people. So thank you for this.
There's one more thing I'm going to give you here.
Totally, man.
So, I've had that phone number, on a little note, for all these years. Eventually, when I joined the group up in Seattle, I took it over, became the chapter leader for about year and a half, in 2 years, I guess, you know, in all honesty. And then I left. I was going to San Diego on, you know, on the way from Washington. I stay at my mom's house for like a week or so. Just, hey, what's going on? Da 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 da. I'd look up to see if the San Jose group's having a meeting, and they are. They're having a meeting the next week. So I show up, and you know, and it's at that guy's house. You know, what's at Mel's house? All these years, he's still the chapter leader, right? And you know, I explained some of the story. Do you know what Mel said to me? Better late than never. If you think about it, right? Very powerful. Better late than never.
They say in the other rooms, in the rooms of recovery, they say there's no losers, just slow winners.
Yeah. So that probably became the driving force into where I was going to go in life. And once I finished with the Navy, I knew I wanted to do speech, but I wasn't quite sure. I guess me only submitting one application and I got in, that was a sign right there. I was like, okay, so I guess I'm going to do this now, you know. And
can't imagine it any other way, Mike. Just imagine
yeah.
that kid and that mom that you helped, or the other story you told me about the IEP meeting where you came in with such wisdom that other people somehow were missing. You wouldn't have had that if not for your, you know, the circuitous route, the winding road that you took. But what a scenic view, man. So I want to thank you. We'll wrap here, not because there isn't another 10 hours of wisdom to unpack, but people need to get on with their day perhaps. So maybe we'll go around 2. It would be an honor to have you come back, but thank you for taking the time. If you're liking this, share it. If you're liking this, send it to somebody that you think would appreciate it. Post it on your own feed or in communities of people who are training speech therapists or people who stutter. And you can always check out more on the podcast, Transcending Stuttering with Uri Schneider. And if you want to get hooked in with this whole Transcending Stuttering project, you can go to schneiderspeech.com/TSA. And there's a way to sign up there for some free updates and just lots of goods just for people to gain more insight and access to these kinds of conversations, which are always public and free. And of course, there are opportunities to go deeper, but just thank people like Mike for adding such wisdom and such value. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. It's a pleasure, and it always will be. If you,
Thanks.
At some
Open
point
door.
in the future, if you want to, give me a ring. We'll do it again.
Consider yourself rung up. All right. Well, thanks.